Today is the fourth hand building session, and these are just basic hand building techniques. We're going to be using a slab today to make just a little vase. This is one that my daughter made a while ago, and you can see that she used leaves from outside to make all these different textures. So what you're going to need today is the rest of the clay out of your bag. So what I did already was I just rolled mine out, and you can either, if you want to, you can use a rolling pin to do that, or you can do the patting method that I showed you in the mug video, where you just kind of pat it down and then, you know, take your clay and you're just gonna do the throw and flip. And then with with a lot of slab, not with all slab, you're gonna want this to set up just for a little bit. So you want to roll it out, and then you want to let it sit just to get a little bit stiff, because we don't want it to flop when we're trying to stand it up to be a cylinder. So I have it all rolled out. It's been sitting just for a little bit. I'm going to start thinking about some textures that I want to put in it, if I want to put any textures in. And I'm going to try to use basically my whole slab. So I want to, you know, I can lightly just use my finger, and I can make a mark as to how big my slab could possibly be, where I need to put my textures. All I need to do is save just a little corner for the base of my vase. So after I do just a little tracing with my finger as to where my textures might be, I can take my spatula and I can do any smoothing if I want to. You know, I might not want any textures. I might want to just have a really smooth surface, so that when I start to do my decorating, I can just use the glaze and maybe paint a picture on my vase or something else. You don't have to always do textures. Okay, I am actually gonna do a texture, and this is just a placemat, and you can see it has like all the really nice bumpy marks. So I'm gonna decide how to lay it on my vase, and then I'm just gonna take my rolling pin and roll the texture in. If I need to peek, I can pick up an edge and see how detailed my texture is getting, if I want to go any more in some areas, like I see right here. Okay, you just want to be careful not to press it in too much, because you'll be really thinning out that clay. And remember, like I said in some of the other videos, if you find that your texture is sticking, you might want to sprinkle a little bit of cornstarch. It's like when you're baking, you don't want your rolling pin to stick. Okay. So I'm going to peel this up, make sure I have all the texture that I want. Okay. All right, so next I can take my paper clip, which is like a needle tool. That's what we're using it for, and I'm going to just cut out a rectangle. It doesn't have to be perfect. You know, this vase is, that's kind of the beauty of this one. It's gonna look great even if it's not that perfect. So I'm gonna start down here and I'm just gonna cut straight across. And if you want to use a ruler, you can, but you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just going to save that in case I need that for my base, in case I don't have any bigger sections. And then I'm going to cut the side. So for this project, really all we need is some found textures. If you have a rolling pin, if you saved any of your slip, and your clay in your hands, and that's it. So I'm going to cut my last straight line down. And I'm just setting this extra clay aside. I'm just keeping it rolled out and flat because I've already done the work of rolling it out, so I don't want to have to do that again. I think my cat is paying us a visit. Tiger. All right, and then for my top, I have this really nice shape that was from my placemat, so I'm going to use that to my advantage, and I'm going to cut out that shape. So remember, like all the other projects that we've done, we should have our workspace that we just do our clay in. And I know we're working from home, so we might not have like a home studio set up, but just have like a towel that you always work on, or a placemat, and just make sure that you're always cleaning that workspace after you're all done. Okay, so I have my slab cut out, and now I'm gonna pick it up and I'm just gonna test to see. One thing that's nice about working on placemat is that it was kind of stuck down and I couldn't pick it up, but I could pick my whole placemat up and then just kind of peel my slab off. Okay, so I can either try to make a humongous tall skinny vase. This is kind of up to you guys, by starting to form, you know, you can either do, you can try to make it totally round, or you can square off the bottom. All these things are really, you know, I want it to be stiff enough so that I don't get cracks when I'm bending it, but I don't want it to flop. Okay, so I could do a really big tall vase, or if I want to not do that tall, and mine's a little floppy, but I'm going with it, I could also do it the other direction, and I could make it not so tall, but still, I mean, it's still fairly tall. It's about, you know, 10 inches. And then I have this really nice pattern that overlaps because I cut that off and I have the flat top. So either way, I think it will look okay, and you just can decide for yourself how you want to do yours. So like any other projects that we have done, when we want to join two pieces of clay together, we need to make sure that we're doing some kind of scoring, scratching, slipping. So I made a little scoring tool, and it's just a cork and then a cut off paper clip, and it just makes it a little easier. And if you wanted to, you know, you could cut off many bits of paper clip and stick them in there, so it kind of turns into a wire brush like we use in pottery. Okay. I saved this one because it's also good for cutting like a thin coil, and you can use it to put feet on the bottom of things. That's why I only have 2 on this one. Or if you don't have something to cut your paper clips with, you can just score with your your paper clip. Or also, if anyone has an old toothbrush, that's another good way to just scratch up that surface and get the water and the slip in there too at the same time. All right, so I'm going to set this down a little bit. I'm thinking maybe for this one I'm going to try a tall one because I don't have tons and tons of tall bases. It's kind of nice to have a tall one. So I'm going to overlap in this project. I'm not going to do a beveled edge like we did in our mug. So I'm just going to scratch with my toothbrush. If it seems like it's giving me enough scratching, that's good. If not, I can go in with this little tool that I made, or I can also use a fork. You know, that's one of the great things about pottery, is that basically you can use whatever is on hand as long as you have clay. And you need a way to fire it. All right, so I'm just scratching, really getting that slip. And I'm gonna roll this over. And I'm trying to be really careful because I don't want to lose my texture. But I do want to make sure that I have a really solid connection, because I don't want our vase to leak. So I'm just taking my hand and sticking it down as far as I can in there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this end. And I'm just lightly holding it on the inside, and I'm just lightly pressing on the outside. I'm trying not to lose that texture, but I really need to get, maybe if you can fit your rolling pin in there to give you some support while you're pressing. Don't want to lose my texture, but I want to make sure that I'm not going to have my seam pop apart. Okay, so put my rolling pin up there. You might want to put some cornstarch on your rolling pin if you're going to stick it up there. And then I kind of have this weird spot right here, so I'm going to cut that down. All right, so a lot of people just keep that seam, and that's fine. You can keep your seam if you like that seam. You can also decide to smooth it if you want. I'm just going to take my spatula, and I'm just going to smooth just a little bit along that seam because I want to make sure that it's really connected. So another thing that sometimes people do is if they have a seam on a vase like this, is they'll make like little buttons to go down the seam, either with a stamp or like a little cookie cutter. So if you have like a small circular shape in your house that you could cut out like little button shapes if you want. So I saved my slab and I have some of my texture left on there. So I'm gonna just cut out a couple little button shapes. So embellishments, all these little buttons that you're making, you have to score and scratch these as well. So I'm going to put a little bit on there, and so I'm just going to use these to just kind of hide my seam a little bit. That's not something that you have to do. If you want to, you can. if you do, just make sure that you're really attaching them. And this is where my rolling pin comes in handy. Okay, and I'm going pretty fast doing this. I want you guys, you know, you can take as much time as you want smoothing and just really decorating these. Okay. Almost done, and then I'm going to stand it up and I'm going to trace my bottom for my vase. Okay, so remember I kept some of the I kept some of the clay that I had rolled out. Okay, so mine's stiff enough, it's still standing up. All right, so I have this piece of the slab that I still kept aside for the base of my piece. So we've done this before in other projects. I'm just gonna take my base, I'm gonna set it on top of my slab, and I'm gonna take my needle tool and I'm gonna do my base about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch bigger. Like the diameter that I'm tracing is a little bit bigger than my actual base. Okay. So I have that, and then I'm gonna cut it out. And I hope everyone is having fun with these videos, and it just gives you like a starting point to make other things. Okay, so I have that cut out. Toothbrush or my scratching tool, and I'm gonna do some slip and some slip. Okay, and if you can, if you want to, you can also reach inside of the vase and smooth that seam, but you don't have to, it should be pretty stuck. Okay, so I have my vase attached to my base, and now I have to really smooth that base part on. So what I do is I just take my finger and I like scoop up some clay and I attach it into the bottom. So I scoop up and attach it into the bottom. And I'm really taking my time doing this, and I'm working my way slowly all the way around. And this might be a little stuck. Let's see. So I'm gonna turn it so you can see. And I'm kind of like scooping, really pushing the clay up the side of my base. Scoop and push. And a lot of working with clay is just knowing the right moisture level. So when you go to, you know, do these, make sure that you are patient and that you really just consider, like, if I need to wait. So this is set up. Okay, so I have doing some smushing. I'm still slowly going around. And this little overlap, it's covering up my texture a little bit, but it's really gonna make it so my base isn't gonna pop off. Don't want a vase without a base. I'm gonna keep going and smoothing. I'm just doing really small little like pushes. And this is just compressing the clay. It's really gonna make it so I'm not gonna have a problem with it coming off. Okay, so I want you to continue to keep doing that, and if you want, you can again use your spatula and you can, sorry about that, you can go in and just really make that smooth connection. No, you don't want to mess with it too much because you don't want to lose those textures that you made. But you also want the bottom to stay on. So another reason why I like working on something other than just the tabletop is because, as you can see, I'm turning my whole placemat around, and it's allowing me to not have to pick my piece up. Okay. So I can also, if I need to, I can do a little tapping, and that just really gets, you know, if I was a little crooked, my base was a little crooked, I can tap it. Okay. So then you're all done attaching your base, and I just want to go back if you need to, and you can use your fingers, or what tools have we played with before? Let's see, I can use like a skewer, and I can just go back and really make sure that my buttons are attached if I added buttons. Make sure that my seams are really, really, really all attached before I let it dry out. Okay, and with any hand build project, you really want to try to be patient and let it dry out slowly. Okay, that way you're gonna avoid cracks. Any of these seams, if they dry really nice and slow, you'll have more success of them staying together. In case maybe they didn't get smoothed in that well, if you allow them to dry really slow, then it'll really just solidify all that. So my last thing I want to do is I'm going to smooth the top. So I can just take a little bit of water in my hands and my finger, and I'm just going to smooth those edges. And sometimes if you have like a, see, I have like a pretty straight bend across here, so I'm just going to take this little rounded part of my skewer, and I'm just going to push some clay down into there and kind of round that crack off. So sometimes when you have, see it on this part, maybe better right here. See how I have like a pointy spot? So sometimes your clay will like to crack right there. So I'm just going to take this little skewer guy that I probably have at home, and I'm just going to smooth just a little and make that a little bit more rounded, and just compress a little bit of the clay down in there so my crack doesn't want to spread down into my vase. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Okay, so I hope that this last video was fun to do. It was a little more simple than the mug and then the closed form project, but it allows you to really work with a lot of textures, and you can get like a nice, like a bigger showpiece is kind of like why I like it. And then with your extra clay, if you have it rolled out in a slab still, my daughter did a little video about making flower garden stakes, and I will put that in up on YouTube as well, and I'll put it in the links. And just let me know if you have any questions about that. And please be in contact about how to get your pieces fired. And I'm hoping that over the next month I can start having some private one-on-one lessons and get you guys in to start doing your glazing, and then get these projects all finished and home to you and in use in your space. So thanks again, and keep playing in clay.